I was coping so well and showing no signs, even though internally I was like, why is this so hard? I used to be able to do this in 20 minutes. It's been 2 hours, right? So things started to shift in that way.
Hi, friend, and welcome to the Girlfriend's Guide to Midlife podcast. I'm your host, Cathy, 47 years young, navigating the roller coaster of midlife right alongside you. When I realized how much there was to figure out in this season of life, I thought, who better to turn to than our girlfriends? Together, we'll dive into real conversations, share wisdom, and embrace all the messy, beautiful moments of midlife. So grab your favorite drink and let's jump right in. I'm so excited you're here. Hey friend, today we're in for a treat. I'm so excited to introduce you to one of my newer friends, Ravyn. She is a 41-year-old mama of 3 boys. So talk about being in the thick of it. They are all middle school ages, 10, 12, and 13. She's been a wife for 15 years, and she is a healer. And she has quite the story of adversity that really led her to just a space of reinvention, learning some of her strengths, and just really now tapping into those strengths. And at 41 years old, I mean, there's a lot of wisdom that you are here to share. And I'm so grateful because I know how busy you are. And for you to take time to just come and share your story, I think you're going to make a huge impact. So Ravyn, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So I always like to start off with sharing what you're most proud of. And I kind of giggle because she says, I feel like I've lived 75 lives in her one life. Yes. And as women, I don't know if anybody else relates to that, but sometimes, depending on what your life has unfolded, I'm sure. Yeah. But what she is most proud of is her kids. She says, I mean, they are the best thing I've ever done. And being a mom, I so relate to that. So how is midlife?
Midlife is wild. It's the epitome of reinvention, certainly. Yes.
Yeah, I bet. Well, tell us a little bit about maybe some of the things that you feel surprised by in midlife.
Yes, I feel surprised by the freedom that I've given myself and the autonomy that I've given myself to truly embrace who I am authentically. And it's a pleasant surprise, and one also that continues to show up and challenge me. So, yeah. Always on my toes.
I think what I love is that you say I've given myself. And I do think midlife is a space where we tend to give ourselves permission to do things and, be things and to live authentically. And and not everybody always does that.
No, they don't.
So I'm glad that you are.
Thank you. Me too.
You have quite the story to share. And we actually are going to have 2 episodes. So we're going to do 2 episodes because I just think there's so much value in your story.
Thank you.
But take us to February of 21
Sure.
When you had a pretty big life change, and just share with us what happened and kind of we'll start there.
Sure. So in February of 21, while driving my kiddos home from school, we were in an auto accident. We were T-boned. And thank goodness, all of us walked away from the accident. And while I woke up sore the next morning, it wasn't until 9 months later that the weight of the injuries from that accident were evident. And it was evidenced during a high-level briefing at work when I lost all of my words. And it was quite the humbling experience, to say the least. And that took me down a path of not just months, but years of helping myself recognize the baseline that I was operating at and finding a way to find a new baseline that was not set for me by a provider based off of certain batteries or skills.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot
Yeah.
There's a lot in that. So you're with your kids, you
Yeah.
get into an accident. What was that like initially? I've never been in a car accident.
Oh my goodness. So initially, I I looked over my shoulder right upon impact because you think about your kids in the back seat. And so upon impact, I just remember wanting to make sure everybody was okay. And then when everything stopped, it was interesting because statistics are real. Two of us froze and were stoic and quiet, and the other two were screaming and fighting for life.
Mhm.
Everybody was fine except for my middle son had a small cut, and his youngest brother was yelling, "He's dying!" because he was yelling, "I'm dying." And had it not been for an angel that was a neighbor that was a firefighter in the window to say, "Everybody's fine, calm down." I really, really am so thankful for that stillness and that peace and people who can show up in that capacity for others, because it was life altering and changing, not just for myself, but for the driver of the vehicle behind me who was also remorseful, right? And it was a turn of events for all of us, for better or worse. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that nobody at the time was seriously injured.
Thank you, too.
I know accidents can, there can be other outcomes.
Right.
But you said 9 months later, I'm assuming like you still like walked, you went to the hospital, did
Yes.
you
Yes.
were you diagnosed with anything? Like, was
Absolutely.
there,
So, yes. So, following the injury, um, we were actually on accident call or patrol. It is when cops are not being dispatched due to weather.
okay.
And so we were able to walk away and actually push our vehicle into our driveway. We were almost home.
Mhm.
And all of that to say, the next day when I woke up in severe pain, I called on my doctor and I was in for x-rays and MRIs. And then weeks went by and things weren't getting better. And I asked for a repeat MRI of the brain because I was having these concussive symptoms.
What were the symptoms?
The symptoms were finding that in order to finish a thought, I would have to close my eyes, or short-term memory, definitely. And then being able to retain any new knowledge, I couldn't hold more than 5 or 6 items at a time.
Mm.
So where I used to tout myself on being type A and remembering everything and super conscientious and not letting things fall through the loop, it was becoming evident over a very long period of time that either something was really wrong or I was really changing. And I think it was the both hand. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so you were operating at this really high level.
Right.
One identity that you didn't share with me that I do want everybody to know is that you were a military servicewoman. So thank you
Yes.
for your
Oh,
service.
thank you. Yes.
How many years did you serve?
I was active duty for 10 years in the finance career field. And then when I got pregnant for the third time, I thought this is silly and I should probably decide to get out now. So at 10, I got out, finished my master's in business, and then joined civil service shortly
Okay. Mhm.
thereafter.
And so, civil service, you're still working for the
Yes,
military.
correct. So I was first hired as a DoD contractor working on the F-35 platform down in Eglin Air Force Base. And then my husband received orders to relocate to Colorado. So I most recently served down at Peterson Air Force Base prior to medical retirement.
Okay. And you're working and briefing like generals and, working in the civil service space. And then you had a moment where you just froze.
Right. I
9 months later?
froze. Not exactly. And I think what is super interesting now that I can reflect back on it is that I did have a solid team of folks that were working alongside me every single day, two that were working very closely beside me. And it became evident to me that they were carrying me and helping me in a lot of ways that maybe I hadn't recognized until way later. And so eventually, when it got to a point to where I could not return to that working environment due to my new injuries, it was decided that medical retirement would be best, and that was really hard to accept.
Yeah,
at this age.
I can imagine. I
Yeah.
mean, especially if you're operating your A type, you're operating,
Yes.
firing on all cylinders all the time, something that you're really proud of, something,
Yeah.
I mean, and then you have a kind of this just life altering moment. And the moment was the accident, but it was the
Right.
aftermath that brought you to another moment.
Right.
And so, like, making that decision, what was that like? Was that your decision? Was that somebody else's decision? Did somebody
Mm,
else say, hey, you can't do this anymore? You're not functioning at a high
right.
enough level? Or did you just say,
Well, it came down to several factors. It came down to, hey, we would like you to return to the office full time now because we're concerned about your performance. And due to the protocols that were in place for me for pain management and also just visually the things that I could operate well under, um, the environment there wasn't conducive for my healing. And so it was really a long, drawn out process of finding out whether or not I would be able to be retained and work on an alternate location. But due to the nature of the mission and for the better of the mission, it was decided that I would medically retire. And I support that even more now than I did then. I was really resistant to it at first, for sure.
yeah, I don't know about you, but my husband Marcus
Mhm.
was a firefighter and he
Oh,
was injured on the job. And then he had to medically retire. And just to watch that shift in identity from a job and a career that he loved so much
yeah.
to this ongoing, like, quest of like finding yourself again
Yeah.
was really challenging for him.
I'm sorry.
Like, what did you experience? Was it similar?
Definitely. Yes. And I don't think it is so dissimilar to those who have retired from military, whether it was on time or early, right? Or any type of service type related job, because it does take a special type of person to be in those jobs anyway.
Hmm.
And then it becomes about the camaraderie and the community and of course the mission that you're serving. And so to strongly affiliate with a group that you're proud to be a part of, and then to later have to find a new way to self identify, I think that is the challenge in midlife. And I also think it's a beautiful gift if we can step back and really look at the opportunity to embrace ourselves in a new way and to really check in about how we like our eggs.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
You
Well,
know?
it's easier said than done, right?
Sure.
Like I love that you um find encouragement in, hey, let's check in. Like there's so much beauty if you look for opportunity.
Yeah.
But going through, and I don't want to just,
Yeah.
dismiss just the challenge of a
Sure.
career transition and this identity that you've held now for, you were in the military for 10 years and then you were a contractor for how many years?
Yes, I was contractor and then civil service almost 10 additional years. So,
So we're talking 20 years of an identity working at a very high level,
right.
very type A. And I just say that because I'm not a type A, but I've worked with type A and if you're a type A and you're listening, you get this. Um
It's really tough to let go when you are used to having everything so orchestrated and that you know yourself so well
yeah.
and you know what it takes.
Yeah, I mean, you're showing up. You know what to expect every day. You have that schedule aligned.
Yes.
Whereas, then you go through a grief period, I imagine.
Yes. There was a point in time to where I'm pretty sure my neighbors thought that I was on drugs because I mowed my lawn 4 times a week because it was the one thing that I had control over. So I really took on a love of being outside. And I think it was a couple of things. Number one, being outside. Finally, after years and years of being inside in an office, right? And after COVID. And also just knowing that I could have control over this one thing.
Mm,
So, an exercise of control was really important to me in the areas that I was still good at something because I had to face the fact that I was no longer good in these areas. And I think that's so informative of what, in my own quest, if you will, of where my attention was being directed.
Yeah. So how was it on your kids and your hubby to watch you
Yeah.
and support you through the transition?
Well, firstly, I feel so sorry for Johan because he's been married to so many different versions of me. Thank God he's still sticking around. My son said it best. He said, Mom, it's like when that car accident happened, that old soul flew out and this new one flew in. And what I think is super
Wow.
interesting about brain injuries is that they do say you return to your like 19-year-old self in terms of cognitive function where I have the injury in the brain. And so it was
Wow.
like returning to this authentic part of myself that I was super worried that the military would shake out of me, necessarily so.
Mm-hmm.
And they did.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got to come back and sit back in this energy of who I am without all of the excess. And it's been wicked cool and really hard for a lot of people at the same
I'm sitting here thinking to myself,
time.
like 19-year-old Cathy,
Right?
what would that be like? I have a 19-year-old right now
Oh my gosh,
who is
yeah.
like, navigating all kinds of things. And
Yeah.
I don't think that he loves this phase of life.
Sure, it's hard.
But we also like don't really realize how much we appreciate the phases unless maybe you get to go back.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, at 19, it was one of those interesting years of what do I do with myself? Who am I really going to be when I
Yeah.
grow up? And you start to feel that itch of you better do something with yourself.
Yeah.
And it was at that age I joined the military. So,
Okay.
yeah, it's really cool to be able to go back and say, what is your purpose? What do you want to wake up and do every day? And to be able to actually embrace that.
And what wisdom from
Yeah.
your child.
I know. I know. I'm so
That is
grateful.
precious.
Thank
Is that
you.
your younger, older, middle?
It's my youngest.
Mm,
Yes. He's fun. He's my little sprite.
yeah. That is so sweet.
Thank you.
I don't know, what a neat comment.
Yeah.
Well, this is kind of the reinvention phase that I get to now be a part of
Yeah.
because I have, and but like I am on a spiritual journey. And one of the things that I've learned about myself through midlife is really just the energy part of me. I'm like
Yeah.
a significant empath.
Yeah.
I hold a lot of other people's energy. And I, especially through perimenopause, find myself some days where I'm just so wiped out. And that
Yeah.
could be energetically, that could be hormonally. I think it's kind of just a combination of all of it.
Sure.
Part of it is my own reinvention,
Yeah.
right? And like putting all this really fun, crazy stuff out in the world, but then I get exhausted.
I get it.
So I actually went online and met Ravyn because she is now a Reiki practitioner and a healer. And that is part of the new story that unfolded through this reinvention.
Yeah.
I believe that, we all find the people that come into our paths are in there for a reason. And I literally just Googled and I didn't find anybody on Google. So then I went to Instagram. You're not even really like a big Instagram
No.
person, but I found you and you were available. I find that Reiki really helps me feel balance and grounded. It's just an energy massage.
Yes,
I mean, that's
exactly.
I am not a Reiki
Yes.
practitioner, but that's how I describe it. And I think it's very woo-woo.
Sure.
However, for me, it really works. I
Yeah.
always leave feeling very centered and relaxed. It's a great time of just being quiet. And anyway, so I would love for you to just share this story of being a type A military professional to launching this new space or
Sure.
really coming, into your own as a healer. And what does that mean to you? What is Reiki?
Oh,
All the things.
yeah. Well, let's see. What is Reiki to me? Reiki is what talk therapy wasn't for me in
Mm,
terms of relief. And so I discovered Reiki actually on a business trip in Tampa. And I walked in, I laid on that table. I got up and said, "What is this? I need more of this all the time." Because I was in Colorado. Once I discovered it, I started hunting for a teacher because I struggled consistently with anxiety and depression during my active duty years and civil service years, which I'm now learning that when we fight against our life purpose, we're met with these challenges to be information. However, all of that to say, I found the right teacher here in Colorado and I studied under her for her level one. Right at the beginning of my auto accident, rolled in right into her level two class in the next months, just like this is what we're doing now. And several months later, when I had realized that I was struggling with an injury, I started her level three because it was just so profound in keeping me grounded
Mm,
and with somebody who struggled with pre-existing mental health struggles such as ADD, anxiety, depression that comes from the ADD and the anxiety, and to find a way to help regulate my nervous system from within and to feel differently in my body was such a gift.
mm.
I really thought that I was going to continue to study and explore Reiki only for my own self study and maybe to make sure that I could support my boys as they got older and my husband, of course. And then Reiki studies led me into yoga philosophy studies, and yoga philosophy studies led me into Chinese medicine school. And so when I learned that our Western society is truly one of the only ones that do not treat the spirit when we treat the whole person, that's when I knew that I was onto something. And so, all of that to say, Reiki is my passion. It's what I enjoy doing most. And being able to connect with people in a way that allows them to feel safe and relief, even just while they're on the table, and to know that it does have lasting effects, especially for those who are interested in learning it for themselves to practice at home too.
Wow. So,
Yeah.
so much to unpack there. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
The timeline is not ironic, but is ironic. I mean, like, so you go to this, and I'm so curious, first of all,
Yeah.
like a business trip, you find Reiki. Like,
Yes.
how did that happen?
Okay. So I had a coworker who I really enjoyed, and she had went down to Tampa, and we had talked about Reiki because I had tried it locally, although I was underwhelmed. And she said, "Wait, I tried it when I was on a business trip. You need to go see this lady." And so I went to go see Coco in Tampa during a business trip, and mind was blown. It was just the difference in between, I think, probably practices and also just who you vibe with. Because, as with anything in life, your energy practitioner is kind of like your hairdresser.
Mm,
Who do I like affecting this part of me, and does it make me feel better, and does it help serve me in some way, right? And it really can be that specific when it comes to the type of energy that you're
I
working
think
with.
I think it's the same with counseling, right? Like you might
Sure.
go to a talk therapist
Right.
and you're like, "What? I'm not vibing at all with this person. I've gone
Right.
2 or 3 times, it's not working."
Yes.
So I think that
Yeah.
that's okay, good wisdom. So you have this life, changing moment where you're like, "Wow, this really impacted me."
Mm-hmm.
And then in the beginning of February of 2021, you start basically Reiki school.
Yes.
You're level 1, you start training, and then you get in your accident.
Yes.
And, I we talked a little bit about, medication and
Oh,
how you go to the hospital because or doctor because you're not
yeah.
feeling good. And
Yeah.
what was your experience with that?
So right away, it was evident that I sustained soft tissue injuries and that I had some rotation in my spine from C2 all the way down. And my husband had to relocate for a year to finish his active duty time, and I was going to be single parenting my three children while dealing with these issues. And it just shocked me that the doctors that I continued to see to find ways to cope and heal would say, well, here's 120 Vicodin a month, here's gabapentin, here's an anxiety med, and all of that to say, it just made matters worse. It exacerbated the neurocognitive symptoms that I was up against. The pain was always there anyway. And so I was just inundating my body with the chemical overload that was not serving me. And
I mean, I remember taking medication like Percocet or Vicodin, and man, the brain fog and the heaviness, and just it like cuts off your feeling, makes you just want to sleep and feel numb. And here you are, somebody that likes to operate at a high level. And so you're pushing back, going, I don't want that.
no, well, I just couldn't fathom at this stage of life. So this is years ago, right? And I'm 41 now, so I was still in my 30s. And I just did not think that it was an acceptable baseline to give someone who obviously had the gumption to want to improve, right? And I think that it was very telling to me what systems are in place for folks who are up against these challenges, and hopefully what we can do better in the future.
So you just said something like, they're giving these to you, and you're pushing back because you want to improve.
Right.
And I really think ultimately we're not feeling good, right? But a lot
Right.
of people don't know that those medications are just the Band-Aid,
Right.
right? They're not really, they're just treating symptoms, and they're not
Right.
making you better.
No.
However, when you're in pain or you're experiencing things that are difficult, sometimes you feel desperate,
Absolutely.
right? And then you're like,
Absolutely.
I do want to improve, but I don't know how to overcome this without pushing down the pain with medication. But
Yeah.
you, in your wisdom, or maybe just like at your soul level, I don't know, like sometimes I just think we have to dig deeper if we know something's not right.
Right.
Or if you're taking the medication and you're like, it's not working, just knowing that there's another way.
Right. Well,
So, like, how did you know there was another way? How
well,
did you know, hey, these are not the way? Because not everybody
yeah,
has that wisdom.
sure. Agreed. And I can't say that I did, other than sincerely leaning on my intuition and my faith and those around me. The scariest thing to me about brain injuries now is that I've shared with you that I did high masking. So even at work and at home, there weren't very many people who were even picking up the subtle cues that something was off.
What do you mean by high masking?
That means that I was coping so well and showing no signs, even though internally I was like, why is this so hard? I used to be able to do this in 20 minutes. It's been 2 hours, right? So things started to shift in that way. And
Can we just talk for a second
yeah,
about like how many women, I mean, women do that.
yeah,
We like, I don't think I've ever heard it talked about that way, but like when things are not right, we just keep going. We mask. We don't. I mean, I shut down and have I'm like a 2-year-old. Like I'll have a temper tantrum
sure.
because the
'Cause you
masking
reach
is,
your
yeah, you
max.
do. Like you blow
Yeah.
up, right?
Yes.
So
That's
here,
real.
yeah. Okay, sorry to interrupt you. So
No.
you're masking and
Yeah, I'm masking, and really what's interesting is that it was my kiddos who noticed first. I was the one who they would validate their schedules with. And even though my husband was in North Dakota and we're in Colorado, at night when dad was on the iPad, they were validating things with dad. Not that that's not fine. It just wasn't how our family was used to operating, with dad not being local. And so it was telling, right?
what give me an example of what that sounded
Sure.
like.
Where mom would be like, no, we need to have you at practice by blah, blah, blah time with these things, right? It would be more, you have practice today? And then letting that slip. And then the next week, trying to do better or put different systems in place not to do that again, and maybe failing again. And then, so
The
that system
systems you
doesn't work
had
for
in
me.
place,
Uh-huh.
they were no longer working. You
That's
were
right.
forgetting things. You weren't,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. I was forgetting. I was dropping the ball. I was not being myself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was the one who remembered the fine details to make sure that anybody we encountered was okay and comfortable. And I have to tell you, I'm so grateful that part's gone. Managing everyone's comfort is no longer my hobby.
Yeah. Responsibility. Do you really think that was a hobby?
Yeah, no.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Wow, wow, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're, now leaning into Reiki training,
Yeah.
but you've also just decided on a different path of healing for your own personal journey. And I think that that's something you and I have talked about too, is oftentimes healers
Mhm.
come to that space through their own personal journey.
Oh,
They
sure.
learn a lot about themselves through that. They maybe try something and like traditional medicine and it's not working. And so they're desperate for relief and they're looking for other ways to do that. And
Yeah.
so, do you feel like the accident exacerbated the path to becoming a healer? Like, and then just that journey of becoming a healer, like how did that unfold?
Sure. Well, one part I left out about the morning of the accident is I sincerely prayed that morning that I could find a way financially to support my family outside of this career because it was making me a miserable person.
That was before the
That was
accident.
the morning of the accident. And I said, with no harm to my family, but I left myself out. And I think about that often. And now I do include myself in my own prayer. So if you take away anything today, please include yourself in your own prayers.
Interesting.
But all that to say
Mhm.
that I sincerely feel that I've always been in communion with Spirit. I've had an active, ongoing relationship with Spirit every day of my life. And that was the beginning of a test and an answered prayer and a way for me to be right set on my path because I think about how terrifying these experiences were, but how much more terrifying it would be to spend 2 more decades in civil service in a finance management role. Because not that there's anything wrong with that. We need those folks, and there's a lot of great folks doing that work, but it isn't what feeds my soul. And I think that we're all here and that the things that we're intentionally meant to be doing do feed our soul.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, people know if they feel stuck
Yeah.
and if they feel aligned or if they feel like they need to shift. And it's not always easy to just even tune in and listen to that. But something that you just said that I'm really curious about, and I think, the healing space, when you say I identify as a healer, that can rub people the wrong way.
Sure.
I mean, there are Christians that are listening. There are
Yeah.
people that are, like, are going, gosh, this is so woo woo. I'm turning it off.
I
Like,
get it.
and so you were talking about spirit and being aligned with spirit. And so, like, kind of just tap into that a little bit because I identify more now with just spirituality. I, believe in God. I still talk to Jesus. I have a relationship, with God, with Jesus. I probably, since I've made just this shift of like just this traditional path of like, what all the rules are to like my
Yeah.
own relationship, I feel like I have a better relationship with God than I've ever had.
Sure.
But I'm just curious if you can kind of help maybe a listener like find a little bit of understanding in all of
Sure.
this that maybe feels like this is so woo woo. Is this witchcraft? Like,
Sure.
you know what I mean? Like it just
Sure.
some of the language of,
Right.
oh, I am aligned with spirit can feel
Yeah.
weird to some people.
Sure. Well, I'm talking about the Holy Spirit, really. And I think that that is most palatable for our Western society. But again, it's no longer my job to keep people comfortable, and I'm grateful for that.
Mm,
My job is now to challenge folks to ask themselves why that makes them uncomfortable, right? Because there are so many beautiful people in all different walks of faith, and I have respect for most all of them, right? And I think that we're all missing it. And when I say it, I'm talking about that Christ-like love that we were taught in our generation and the way that Christ embraced people from all walks of life, regardless of their path, to sit with him, right? And I am not saying that I am Christ or that any of the healers that I've come across are Christ. But when I tell you that so many that I meet, if not all, vibrate at that Christ consciousness frequency, what I'm really saying to you is that they're embodying that love for humanity and really walking it every single day, despite if it is the path that is most comfortable for quote unquote certain Christian paths, right? And I know so many beautiful Christians. My family are LDS and I support them. And there are so many Mormon women in this community that have uplifted my own home and family, and I'm grateful for them. And I do not find a hierarchy in terms of who's better serving. I just see us all as servants, and it's up to our own discernment to make sure that we are in communion with the Holy Spirit in our everyday walk. Does that answer the
Yeah,
question?
how would you, like, what is your, if you, somebody said, define spirituality versus religion?
Sure. I would say that spirituality leaves spaciousness for you to explore exactly what God is to you and exactly how you resonate and connect with God and with Jesus. If Jesus is your jam, Jesus is my jam. But I've had visitations from Mother Mary. I've had visitations from Kuan Yin. I've had visitations from Vishnu. And to say that these energies don't exist within our world, okay. And also to demonize them all, okay. And spirituality, our energies on this earth between us, we're all loved, we're all God's children, and we are all made in his image, correct? These energies exist in order for us to be able to cope with the human condition. And I would just say that spirituality allows spaciousness for us to explore how best to connect to God, whereas religion confines you to a set of doctrine and rules that can feel like you are allergic to it. Or worse, walking into a congregation and really wanting to have that community and noticing how beautiful it is and not feeling the spirit there.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think doctrine can be very peaceful for people too.
It's a great guide.
I think what I love is it's like a yes and. It's not
Sure.
one or the other. You can't,
Sure.
you can, be a Christian and be spiritual.
You absolutely can.
And you can be Muslim and be spiritual.
Well, and Muslims are very spiritual. I think that one thing we don't acknowledge is that we have a spirit or an energy body that is very scientific, and we also have a spiritual body that is very spiritual. And the one thing that I am doing when I'm conducting a Reiki session is affecting the energy layers that are associated with the physical body. We can also get into spiritual, but I'll save the woo-woo. And and all of that to say, there are research studies that are peer-reviewed journal article that are showing the efficacy of Reiki being administered during surgical suites. So Reiki practitioners are now being invited into sterile surgical suites because they're seeing the efficacy and the need for less narcotics post-surgical, which is really fascinating.
I didn't know that. That's cool.
It all comes back down to it's not the healer, right? To your earlier point, it's the ability to know that the healing is coming only from God, and only when you're willing to set yourself and your own agenda aside and make sure that it's about the person who's on your table and that you are being the conduit for whatever God has in store for them that day. That's the difference, I think, too, with intention.
Yeah. So going back to your own personal story of healing, I mean, all of that is so, thank you for sharing all of that.
It's very, a lot. Thank you.
It's a lot and it's fascinating, which is why we'll have a part 2. Because I really do want to, I think we'll go into some more of those questions because I think it's just, some people find it really interesting and some people find it really scary. And I think one thing I love about something that you said is that, you are living your authentic truth. And your journey and story has really just unfolded in that way. I think sometimes it's really hard to show up and live in a space that isn't popular,
Sure.
and to not allow yourself to be authentic if it's not popular,
Sure.
right?
Absolutely. I mean, yes.
Yes, and so as you're healing, what are some of the things that you did
Ah,
outside of the narcotics and the
yeah.
medication and to really help heal your brain injury?
I will tell you, it took several paths, but the ones that really stick out to me that were the most were cranial sacral therapy was a game changer after the TBI. I would say also definitely Reiki. I I am so grateful to my whole cohort and all of the teachers that have been a part of that journey. Chinese medicine and acupuncture and understanding that herbs are medicine. I
Mm,
really hope to help spread this message also. Um, and learning exactly what my body type is and what would be receptive to in terms of healing. And Chinese medicine was very good for helping identify that as well. Because we are all united under humankind and we are also different in terms of our chemical makeup, how we metabolize, how we process, how we create new neural pathways. And I think first and foremost, the willingness to sit down and really answer the questions truthfully about myself, and then to lean into, okay, this is who I am, and really get to know myself better helped with the healing because it helped me know not which symptom to chase, but
mm,
but what was really occurring that needed
mhm.
attention. And if you have space for it and you can take this out, if not, one of the things that led me on the path to herbology was I noticed that with the hydrocodone, it was helping my pain, but then I'm relying on it for my mood.
Mm,
And it was that flip that I was like,
mhm,
no, we're not doing this.
mhm.
And what's unfortunate is that so many people, as we know, get caught up in that monster of this is the only thing I think that can help me. I need to be able to continue doing X job, which demands this physical thing from me. And then they exacerbate their injuries or they end up addicted, right?
Mhm.
And there are just other ways to approach it once you're stable. I do have such a solid understanding that Western medicine is a beautiful gift and is needed. And I like to think of it as it was taught to me at the Chinese medicine school as emergent medicine, whereas Eastern cultures use proactive medicine. Where do they start? With food. It
Mhm.
really started with food. What are you feeding yourself, Ravyn?
Mhm.
Because your brain is not happy, right? And so removing inflammatories, knowing that that's number one. And it's like listeners may say
It's
like
so not
duh,
intuitive
but
though.
no,
I mean,
but
duh,
no.
but not. Like I
Yeah,
don't know if I would like get into a car accident and intuitively think like, what am I feeding myself? I need to cut out
that's
inflammatory
right.
foods. Like, so I don't think it's intuitive. I think intuitiveness is to go to the doctor
Yeah.
and to trust, that which
Yeah.
sometimes you do need the
Sure.
short term, but I
Sure.
think it's the long term. Like if you're dealing with a long term brain injury, like you were, and then it was impacting your career,
Yeah.
and that's probably a little bit of a different journey than like if you broke your leg and you got to go and get a bandage and
Well,
take some
yes
pain
and
meds.
no. Yes and no, because it comes down to the ability for the body to heal. And how are we setting up our inner ecosystem to be able to support us in that way?
Yeah,
You know, and I'm
yeah.
not perfect at it. I'm still learning this stuff as I
I
go.
mean, no, right.
I still love donuts. It's a thing.
The guilty pleasures, right?
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so if somebody's listening and they're like, okay, I'm curious, maybe it's woo woo, but I want to give it a try. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, you have created something so beautiful
Thank you.
from this journey. I'd love for you to just share this community that you've built and
Okay.
maybe just share with people where they could turn to if they want to tap into maybe a little bit more of the
Thank you.
non-traditional healing.
Yeah, thank you. So last year, while I was in school, I went to a yoga event and I met my then business partner. And she introduced herself and said that she did brand and marketing. And I said, great, maybe you can help me set up my Reiki studio. And she said, why is it so hard to find people like you? And so that turned into us going nose to the grindstone, 12, 14-hour days for several months to create Conscious Colorado Collective, which is an online directory of local healers who have been vetted. So everyone has a safety background check on file with a third party. And also in February, we launched our online community. So this is a place to where listeners could come for free and join and see the different modalities that have been being offered through info sessions and online events, and also get to know what other healing modalities exist. Because that is the real kicker, right? It wasn't until I had a brain injury and that research capability was taken from me that I really needed to have a resource to go and see what were these different options. And thank you for mentioning this also, because we are sincerely considering having a TBI awareness month for Conscious Colorado Collective in November timeframe, and bringing together healers who have worked specifically with brain injuries to have talks, and for people such as myself who have been on the receiving end to talk about what worked for them, because again, we're all so different.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll definitely connect all of the places to find you.
Thank you.
I feel so excited for this, and that, you're just taking this, and running with it, because I do think I was like, yeah, I know I've done Reiki. I know it works for me. I really like it.
Good.
I've learned a lot about myself when it comes to energy. And then finding somebody, you just Google. And then it's like, healers are kind of hard to find. And then there's also just the space of the trust. So you're taking the time to vet people and to make sure that they're, solid business people and that you can trust them. So that's so cool. And then you are launching a podcast.
Yes.
You have some interviews in the queue. It
do.
hasn't officially gone live yet, but what's the name of it?
It is called Tap Intuit, Intuit.
Okay.
A play on intuition. And it's a way for us to get stories from the healers told. So let me back up and say it's a way for us to allow healers to have a platform to tell their stories about how they came into their own healing journeys. Because as you mentioned before, the wounded healer is the most linear path towards becoming someone who identifies as a healer. And I just have met so many fascinating people who have overcome challenges that are incredible. And getting their stories out will not only be such a gift to our community, since these are local to Colorado healers, but also a way to see that you're not in it alone. People have done this before, and there are others out there that want to support you. And I really love the community aspect, so that we can learn from and with each other, because we all have something to bring regardless of our background.
Yeah, that's awesome. I kind of have this theme for you of from military badass to healer.
I wish I was a badass. I was a finance true.
Hey, we need finance people too.
Thank you.
I
call it guilty by association.
Okay, fair enough. Well, your husband's in the military, so you've also okay.
We didn't like each other at all. It was great.
Okay, so let's wrap up with just some lighthearted, fun questions for you. What is a song that always puts you in a good mood?
Oh, goodness. I would say right now, Heartlines by Florence and the Machine.
Love Florence and the Machine. Favorite beauty product?
Okay. Yes. Westman Altier. It's a skin serum.
Okay, I like it. What is one thing you wish your younger self would have known?
Ah, you can have a voice and your people are out there. Yeah.
I like it. Yeah, because we didn't always believe that when we were little, right? That we have a
No.
voice, our voice matters.
No, and I grew up in a very small rural area. I graduated with less than 100 people. So to say that I was a weirdo is putting it lightly. Well, I got along with
Guilty
and
by
liked everybody.
association.
Yes, yes. I liked everybody, but that was me.
Okay. Guilty pleasure you cannot resist.
Donuts.
Yep.
It's a problem. My kids are like, no, mom's going to eat them. And I will.
Have you tried Dad's donuts yet?
No.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
Look it
no.
up. They're so
Yep, I
good.
will.
Local favorite. And what is an unfulfilled bucket list dream of yours?
Oh, I want to go swim with the whale sharks.
Ooh,
Yeah.
wow. Where is this going to happen?
Mexico. Up in Mexico. Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to do one more episode. We'll dive in a little bit more into just the healing side of things and some questions that some burning questions that people might have about Reiki and alternative types of healing. So thank you for your time, though, sharing your story. I really do value just, the challenges that we face in life, in midlife. Like, it sounds like your story is just really giving you the courage to show up and reinvent and be authentic and live your truth. And what else more could we ask for in this next phase of life? So thank you, friend. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Hey friend, thanks so much for tuning into this episode. I hope it brought you value, a few laughs, and maybe even an aha moment. The conversation doesn't end here. We've got an amazing community of women waiting to connect with you. Join us on Facebook in the Girlfriend's Guide to Midlife podcast community group, where we share takeaways, swap stories, and cheer each other on. You can also find me on Instagram at Girlfriend's Midlife Podcast for daily inspiration, sneak peeks of upcoming episodes, and a behind-the-scenes look at this midlife journey. Or on my personal handle at Dear Cathy 719, where I share about my day-to-day life, real estate, and what I find inspiration in. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love it if you left a quick rating and review. It helps more women like us discover the podcast and reminds me that I'm not just talking to myself over here. And don't forget to hit the follow button so you'll be the first to know when the next episode drops. Check out the show notes for links to connect with today's guest and all the goodies we have mentioned. Until next time, keep thriving and showing the world how fabulous midlife can be. You've got this.